Welcome to another election edition of TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stassja. This is Ange. Ange,
Hi, everyone.
what a week it has been.
I have a smile on my face, but I'm crying inside. Our arguments have been completely misrepresented by the media. Completely. And they are using Kath Deves, our colleague, who is running for a very unpopular in an election that's very unpopular towards the party that she's running with, the Liberals. They're using Kath Deves as a political football and handpicking things that she said to people like us and other gender critical folks to paint her as a Nazi sympathizer or something like that. A transphobe, a homophobe, a bigot, and the worst possible person. Like, you know, it's just horrendous what they're doing to her. And the fact that people like me who are politically opposed to Kath on a lot of topics, but agree on this whole gender thing because this gender thing unites women. People like me who are traditional leftists, left to, you know, protect and try and right the wrongs that have been written about her. And we're just being completely ignored because the entire media is promoting trans women in sport, in women's sport. They're promoting children having their, you know, breasts removed at 15. They're promoting all the horrendous things that we all know about and we're trying to tell people about. They're actively promoting this as normal, while silencing all of us that are just shaking the tree going, this is bullshit. Listen. And it's so frustrating. Frustrating.
I really feel for Kath at the moment. I imagine she's going through hell the last 2-3 days. It's been really vicious, really nasty. The Guardian in particular have trawled through her deleted Twitter account. They keep reframing it as in since deleted tweets, but it's like she shut down her whole account the moment she was pre-selected, right? That's part of the package. I really feel for her. It must be a very, just to have so much negative attention on you must be awful. But the media are completely out of touch with Australians on this issue. We know that because of the poll done by Binary. Someone sent me photos of another Compass poll that I don't know who commissioned it, maybe Sky News, but Sky News put up the stats, and it was roughly 80% of respondents do not want men in women's sport, think that there needs to be legal protections for women's sport. And the third question was, what is a woman? Is woman an adult human female, or is it a gender identity? And again, it was around 80% adult human female. So the left-wing media, because they're so stuck in their little middle-class white left-wing bubble, they think that they're making Kath look really bad. But the truth is the majority of Australians agree with her and on these things. And really what left-wing media are doing is promoting our cause. So hats off to Kath. Big thank you to her for finally getting these issues the media attention that they deserve. The last thing I'll say is, can I say one more thing? The last thing, Australia is now where the UK was 3 years ago. And they did exactly the same thing to Graham Linehan when he compared transgenderism to the Nazis. It's such a bullshit line. What Kath was comparing it to was totalitarianism, authoritarianism, not the fucking Nazis. So, you know, just for future reference, let's just compare it to Soviet Russia, because no one gives a shit if you rip on Soviet Russia. Yeah.
Well, the original thing that she's talking about is the silence when, you know, the Germans invaded Austria and Poland, and people didn't say, oh, you know, oh, that's not good, you know, like it's about the silencing leading to bad things happening. People saying, "Oh, I can't speak out on this issue." I know, children are. I know children aren't being protected from this ideology, but it's not my place to say something about it. I don't want to offend a trans person. It's that thing that when what happens is, because people don't want to cause offense, they don't want to upset the apple cart. These evil things, and there are evil things in the gender industry. These evil things are allowed to snowball, and then everything is out of control. That's what she's talking about. She's not talking about trans activists being Nazis. I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing. It's about the totalitarian ideology and the lack of balance, the no platforming, the demonizing of people that say, "Oh, excuse me, something doesn't sit right with me." Now, I 100% agree with you that this is having a different effect, because I have people in my inbox who I've never heard from before who are asking me for more information about this ideology, because they've seen my angry tweets. They've seen me on Facebook arguing with trans activists, and they recognize that I'm not a transphobe or a homophobe, that I'm a person that's just trying to get a point across. And I've got all these people in my inbox and saying that they've seen our channel because I put something up on Twitter about it, and that they're curious. They're not saying they agree with me, but they're saying, well, what is actually going on? And then I'm actually able to refer them to what is happening. And they're like, whoa, why aren't the media telling this side of the story? So then they're looking at what they are saying, which is basically a whole bunch of defamatory, foul and horrible things about gender critical people and, demonizing us as TERFs. But then they're actually learning about what a TERF stands for and going, well, hey, that's common sense. We agree with you. We don't think that organophiles should be in, rape and domestic violence services. We don't think that these men should be able to take on a trans identity to get into a women's prison. Because there's a thing with the trans ideology. They don't allow for any leeway. It's like 100% everything trans people want or nothing.
Otherwise, you're trans.
And there has to be balance. Yeah, well, you're a transphobe. I'm happy to be called a transphobe because I know I'm not one.
Look, I received a message from one of Holly Lawford Smith's colleagues.
Oh.
Quiet message saying, I'm one of Holly's quiet supporters here at Melbourne Uni. I can't be public. And I love TERF talk. So that was nice.
Hi.
Hi, if you're watching. And another, look, behind the scenes, people are getting really fed up with this shit. And another thing that happened, a friend of mine resigned her membership or cancelled her membership with the Australian Services Union. And she stated why. It's because of their ridiculous stance on women's rights. And she got like 3 missed calls from the union. And she's like, oh, they're probably trying to drag me back in and convince me not to cancel my membership. So she rang them back. She got this guy and he's like, I'm totally on your side. I agree with you. We've got gender neutral toilets here in the building. I tried to push back when they were being put in. It was unsuccessful. And I'll just read out, this guy then went on to message my friend and said, I really enjoyed the chat we had. I discussed it with a real feminist in my team and she agreed strongly with your remarks too. She is called a TERF sometimes by appalling activists and told me that you would be too. The term TERF is a slur, but we discussed the vital work that so-called TERFs are doing to protect women and girls, especially in the UK, hopefully more in Australia as well. So, and then I'll read out one more. This is from one of the women that helps me admin the Coalition for Biological Reality public page. She's at her doctor's and her doctor was talking about cutting being a social contagion. And I mentioned as a mum, I was worried about the transgender trend and he got started. He was unhappy about kids being given hormones and men in women's sport. It was wonderful. From what he said, all the GPs he works with are very concerned about long-term side effects. He said he was scared of sending kids to the hospital mental health ward because they go in with depression and come out as transgender. So it's happening behind the scenes. I think
we know this.
we have to take heart in that most Australians are bogans and are not buying this shit.
Nobody in that, not even the people that espouse it buy this shit, really. When push comes to shove, the privacy of their own homes, they're as big a transphobe as I am. Yep. So I'm probably less transphobic. You know, I'm over it. I'm tired. Like I've spent, because it's Easter and there's no work, I'm not at work. I've spent my whole time on Twitter defending Kath, and I'm really weary and tired and of repeating the same things and asking the same question. One thing I did notice is that her opposition has been weaponizing the momentum against Kath, but Zali Steggall is a former Olympian and a bronze medalist, and we have repeatedly asked her for her stance on trans women in women's sport, and she refuses to answer us, and we keep asking. So while she's happy to direct hate and her followers towards Kath to call her a transphobe for, you know, her stance on having biological males in women and girls sport, she is not prepared to commit herself, which says everything, really. Really
weak. She said some really stupid shit on Twitter. I saw a screenshot, you know, just there are no men and there are no women. Actually, it might have been Jane Caro.
That was Jane Caro. Yeah. Jane Caro has got a trans grandkid. That's why she's like blah blah blah.
So Jane Caro is with the Reason Party. Like, just,
isn't that the former sex party that was started by that, you know, that brothel madam who started the sex party, and that's how the platform of sex worker decriminalisation was introduced in Victoria. They used to call it the sex party, and of course nobody wanted to vote for them, only the degenerates. But then they changed it to the Reason Party, and that's how she got the sex work decriminalised. And then now they've got all these other like trans stuff and all these other like social justice crusades that are really the militant left.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're running with those. But Fiona Patten has form for being a lobbyist. She's a lobbyist, basically. She's a brothel madam, former brothel madam, who is a lobbyist and gets in on the ticket of, oh, you know, I was a marginalised sex worker, when in reality she was a pimp. And I'll probably get defamation lawsuit for that, but it's true.
It's appalling, absolutely appalling. Oh God, what else?
I don't know about you, but I'm just expecting to either have the cops turn up on my door and be charged with hate speech, have my Twitter deleted, I'm already on a Facebook ban. I'm on a Facebook ban for the dumbest thing, quoting somebody else. And it was "men are crazy" was the words I quoted. You got a warning for, and then in inverted commas, "men are crazy," and I'm on a 4-day ban. But you know, I'm expecting to be dragged before the Human Rights Tribunal. I'm expecting to be doxxed and publicly humiliated, all because of my stance on calling out this gender stuff. I don't know about you. You'd be the same.
A little bit. I don't really think about it much. It could happen though, couldn't it? Look, Monday I was going, yeah, I'm going to vote for the Liberals. And then by Thursday, I was like, I might just revert to drawing a big female symbol over my ballot paper and chucking it in. I'm really torn at the moment. I mean, there looks like there was good progress last week with Morrison saying women are a member of the female sex, and the New South Wales Premier saying something similar. I was like, okay, they get it, they understand. And then, you know, Morrison said early in the week that, yeah, he supports Senator Chandler's Save Women's Sports bill. And look, the media has framed it as he's backpedaled, he's abandoned support. The Guardian in particular said something really stupid. Their headline was "Morrison abandons support for trans sport ban after hand-picked candidate apologizes for tweets." The thing is, he hasn't abandoned support. All he's said is that it's not a government bill. It's going to remain a private member's bill. So he's still personally going to support that bill. He bloody well better.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. There, you know, there is an election coming up. It is a hot button issue, and so everyone's backpedaling. I mean, even at Albanese, they said, "Oh, you know, he slams anti-trans nominee," and yet even he said, "Look, we have sex is still a protected characteristic." That's all he said, and yet they've said, and which is true, and they've said that that was him slamming Kath and Morrison's view on trans rights. Now, you know, they're grabbing everything they possibly can and making it about anyone who speaks out about trans rights is demonic.
Yeah.
Anything.
In the wake of that, it was like an identical article went around like every single freaking news media outlet, even the Australian. It's like
there's no investigative journalism anymore. It's all cut and paste.
Yeah, it was like they had copy and pasted it from like news.com.au or something. But they were all presenting it as, oh, it's cheap political points from Morrison. And it's like, no, he was asked a question and he answered it on the sports issue. And anyway, I think it was The Age got fucking Callum Mounty, aka Hannah. They get him on and they're quoting him. Listen to what he said. Of all the concerns women have and are passionate about, this is not one of them. This is a fucking man talking. I am exhausted. If it's good enough for the Olympics that we play, it should be good enough for Scott Morrison. We just want to be allowed to play. You can play, Callum, on the fucking men's team. What a pig. I'm just sick of seeing the Olympic. Hey?
Sorry, no, keep going.
I'm sick of seeing the media platform these idiots. The Project this week.
Oh, all the hosts on the Project, you could tell that they thought that woman was absolutely full of shit, and they're asking their scripted questions, and you could see them just trying not to react, and it was like, okay, it was so funny. But what she was saying was completely outrageous.
Yeah.
And there, you know, most of the people on that panel are critical thinkers.
Yeah.
And they must have been sitting there going, what the hell? And they must have been trying to do the best poker face ever because it was absolutely ridiculous. We'll put a link in the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Oh, and they're dragging out all the trans activists. Do you know how many TERFs have got a platform? Zero, not one. The odd gender critical person might get something published in the right-leaning media, but none of the mainstream media will platform anyone remotely centrist or left at all.
Mate, what's his name on the Project that used to do the Collingwood supporter impression?
Poiter. Peter Hellier.
Peter Hellier.
Yeah.
Come on. Behind closed doors, that guy is fucking laughing his head off at this nonsense.
Yeah.
I mean, that woman, that them woman that they got on to speak, how can you take that seriously? She sounds like she's maybe been taking a bit of testosterone. Her voice was a bit weird. But like, my God, she said that trans women are the most marginalized women in Australia. Excuse me, what about Indigenous women, women with disabilities, migrant women, women with serious mental health problems like schizophrenia? That, like, you know, these assholes, they always weaponize the fucking suicide thing and the poor health outcomes for trans people. Schizophrenic people have the worst health outcomes. Is just such an inversion of reality. I'm really angry.
It is. It's barefaced lying it is. Yeah. And it's just so offensive to me as, you know, a victim of male violence and, you know, someone whose life has been limited because I've been left to be a single parent pretty much on my own. For a man to be able to, at any stage in his life, to just self-identify into my sex and be called the most marginalised man out is just so offensive. And women should be up in arms about it, but instead they're going, oh, he's so stunning and brave. I mean, it's insane. It's completely insane. And some of the people like Caro, who, yeah, she's got a trans grandkid, and she could say, well, you know, I have a trans grandkid, and that's why I have to believe in this ideology in support of my daughter who's been told blah, blah, blah. But she doesn't. She doesn't actually disclose why she's pushing this stuff. Mm-hmm. She's speaking as a feminist. Her, Ford, Van Badham, all of these prominent feminists, they are being dragged out to speak on behalf of feminists and other women. When's the last time any of them walked into a domestic violence shelter or a drug and alcohol rehab or a prison?
Yeah.
Or even a public fucking toilet on their own? Any of them?
Yeah, that's right. They probably haven't used a public toilet in like 20 years.
Or on a plane, maybe, flying off to their wherever. You know, but it's so offensive to me that these women claim to speak on behalf of vulnerable women, and they're dragged up as representatives of the feminist movement. They don't have a feminist bones in their body. Normal people, men, even, you know, support men not committing violence against women. You know, the issues that these women stand as feminists on, they're not feminist issues because they're not. They're general issues. Feminist issues are about giving women that have no voice a voice.
Yep.
You know, signing yourself on freaking white ribbon where all the domestic violence perps sign up to, that doesn't make you a feminist.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wear it purple. Absolutely grooming. Come on. With Kath 100%. Look, the Australian public will see it eventually. They already see it. They just don't know the depth of it and why this is so dangerous.
And they're too afraid to speak out because they see what's happening to Kath and they know that that'll happen to them. They all know. Everyone knows that what happened to Kath Deves or any of the UK TERFs or any of the US TERFs is going to happen to them. And it's only people like us that don't have a platform to lose that are able to speak out. But who's going to see us? Because we can't get out there.
Well, I'm thinking we should invite Senator Chandler on next week and maybe we'll get more subscribers.
Yeah, she's welcome to come on here. She's a woman.
Yeah.
And she's nice. Yeah.
Look, you were talking about these prominent feminists. Well, did you see Grace Thames and Magda Skubanski had a crack at Kath for saying that kids are surgically mutilated and sterilized? Did you see that?
I did see that, and I did comment on both of their Twitters. But
Grace Thames, she said the most, it was a hard to follow tweet what she said. It was something, she said the most evil form of psychological torture, like as if what Kath has said is so abusive towards trans children. But, you know, look, I don't know how the public would view surgically mutilated and sterilized. I'm really not sure about that. What do you think?
I think if they saw the pictures of what was happening where girls are just getting the slice across their chest, and if they knew that the age of that happening here in Victoria is 15 years old, and if they knew all the facts, then they would say mutilation was a fair call.
Yeah.
And if they understood the lack of safeguarding that GPs are now referring at first visit to affirmation-only gender clinics. So children aren't getting their much needed talk therapy that every child who has dysphoria deserves. So if they knew the facts, they would probably agree with Kath, but they are deliberately misleading the public by not providing the facts or the evidence.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Look, where are the freaking investigative journalists?
See, I don't understand Grace Tame, and I feel protective of her as a survivor, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, she's one of the very few that was believed and had a support network around her. She comes from a middle-class family. She was believed. She could prove what happened.
Yeah.
She has a mountain of support, not just from her family, but from the entire nation.
Mm-hmm.
And she can't put herself in the same position as the survivor who does not have that.
Oh, mate,
And how mortifying it would be to be abused by someone as a child, and then as an adult to find out that that person now identifies as a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what's happening.
How disconnected from reality is she on this issue? Far out.
She's another one with luxury beliefs, another upper class person with a platform who will never, ever, ever experience the desperation and the destitution of most survivors. She's never had to go and beg for help.
Yeah, she's got the support. Well,
and she's been believed. That's the most important thing. But what about all those women that are out there and men are invading their female-only spaces? And sometimes it's the perpetrator. How do you think the families of all Reginald Arthur's murder victims feel to see him referred to as the same sex as her?
Absolutely outrageous.
And why can't Grace Tame put herself in the position of those people, those victims, the families of the victims? Why can't she say, how would I feel if my perpetrator identified into my sex and then demanded that he was the most marginalised victim of all?
You've got to hope that she just doesn't know enough yet, and
she's young.
She will peak. But look, our guest today has arrived, so I'm going to bring her in. Okay. Today we have Nina joining us, who is also from Vic Women's Guild. She used to be a Greens Party member, I think.
You want to admit that publicly?
The Greens actually censured her. She was suspended for something like 6 months. Here she is, Nina. Welcome. Hey, guys.
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
We're good.
Now, I was just going to read out a little bit of this public censuring by the Greens Party. So I'll just read it out. Last year, after receiving multiple complaints, the Misconduct panel of the Australian Greens Victoria found that Nina Vallins breached the Code of Conduct Clause 3B, bringing the AGV into disrepute, and 3E, vilification of members and volunteers of the AGV on the basis of their gender identity. Well, it really is the modern day version of trying to put someone in the stocks and throw rotten fruit at them. What can you tell us, Nina? I know there are sort of I know there are limits on what you can say, but
yeah. So it's a funny thing with the Greens complaints process. So if someone makes a complaint about you, you have to keep that confidential, and that requirement remains even if you let your membership of the party lapse or you resign from the party. So you can never talk about a complaints process in the Greens. However, the Constitution allows the party conveners to release the kind of statement that they released about me while I was still a member of the party, and without even doing me the courtesy of letting me know that this statement was going to be put up on the website. So it's an odd position to be in. You know, how can I talk about something which is in the public domain, but I'm not allowed to talk about it?
That's outrageous. That's it's censorship.
Well, I mean, you can certainly see that there are reasons to keep a complaints process private. But I think that, yes, the Greens requirements go too far. And I think it's unfair, right? You know, ultimately it means that my name is kind of besmirched out there. And it's difficult for me to defend myself. But I guess all I can do is point to my record and the things that I have actually said. And people can make their own minds up as to whether or not they think I've brought the party into disrepute or vilified people on the basis of gender identity. You know, if they look at, for example, the things that I said during the 2019 Victorian Women's Guild campaign about the birth certificate bill.
And I suppose also the gay conversion therapy legislation as well.
Yeah, I don't think that I made so many public comments during that campaign. I wasn't the spokesperson for the Guild. We didn't really do much media at the time, so it was really around the birth certificate bill where I gave media comment in my capacity as spokesperson for the Victorian Women's Guild, and obviously not as a member of the Greens, even though at the time I was on the executive of the party, I was on state council, I had numerous office bearer and other elected positions within the party at the time, but I, never in any way gave any cause for people to think that I was speaking on behalf of the Greens.
Okay, yep. And look, Rohan Lepit here in Victoria, he seems to be probably facing something very similar to what you've been through. What do you think about what he said around, I mean, his concern was just that gay and lesbian kids are being transitioned and they probably don't need to be medically transitioned.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have Rohan's comments up before me, but, like the things that I said were like just asking about the safety and privacy of women in domestic violence shelters or women in prison. And we think that male-bodied people, shouldn't have access to those spaces, and it's reasonable for women to feel unsafe in that kind of situation. Rohan as well, it was a comment that he made in a private Facebook group talking about his experiences with his lesbian friends, and just raising concerns around it. He wasn't, I don't think that any child should be allowed to have surgery of that nature. I don't think that it is right for anyone under the age of 18 to, for example, have a double mastectomy. I'm pretty clear on that. But Rohan wasn't even saying that. He was just raising questions about it and what's the right approach to treat someone who's presenting in that way, with that kind of body, like self-loathing. And obviously someone within the Greens took screenshots of that and they posted it. And then people went through and trolled his Twitter feed for his likes and his follows. And they started sharing those things. It's not Rohan who kind of went out seeking this kind of attention. And then he just defended himself in, I think, a way which really spoke to a lot of people, just saying, these are really profound issues. We've got a right to ask questions. I don't apologise for asking those questions. I think that Rohan showed real integrity, and it was, like, for me, really edifying to see that someone who I respect from the Greens, a party to which I gave 12 years of my life, to see another, sort of senior Greens person saying those things.
The Greens nationally this week, Adam Bant came out, said they're pushing for gender confirmation surgeries to be covered by Medicare.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely outrageous. I'd like to know what age, exactly what kind of surgeries they're talking about. What do you think? I think it makes the Greens look bad.
I do too.
Yeah. I don't think that this issue is a vote winner for the Greens. It speaks to the Greens base. It speaks to Greens volunteers. It speaks to people who will already vote Greens, and a pretty kind of rabid, very loud, intellectually uncurious element, ideological, dogmatic element within the Greens. But yeah, who was Adam's audience in saying that? Was it to the voters? Was it to the general voting public? Or was it to the volunteers? I mean, it was probably to the volunteers. But like the Greens have just never got above 10% of the vote. and the Greens should have, right? Like, you've got Helen Haynes in Indi, you've got Zali Steggall, you've got Andrew Wilkie in Tasmania. Like, there is space for independent alternative voices to the two major parties in our parliamentary system. And the Greens have never got more than one person in the lower house of parliament. And we just don't crack 10% of the vote. They. And yeah, I think that while the Greens hoist their flag to an issue like this, in this way, which I think alienates a lot of the public, I don't think that they're going to crack 10%.
The irony of them aligning themselves with big pharma capitalism isn't lost on me. A lot of people were in the comments saying, stick to the environment. This is like not on the same sphere as the environmental stuff. And it was their polite way of saying, you're promoting corporate capitalist, capture of our bodies. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it just seems so ridiculous to me that they would grab this and that be the major thing they're taking to the election, because I don't see anything else that the Greens are bringing.
The Greens' key messages have been phase out coal and gas. I think tackle inequality, and maybe there's also one about jobs, like transitioning in a new economy. So they went into this election campaign with 3 key messages. They were meant to stay on message, 3 messages. That was it. And somehow that's been hijacked by this issue. Now you always see Adam say in his tweets, he will mention trans children, trans interests. Yeah. It's very, very, very disappointing for me, because I think that the Greens have got the best policies on the environment. I think that we need a party which really stands for the environment. We need that desperately. And the Greens policies, if enacted, will harm children. But also the Greens just aren't going to get into power while they have these sorts of policies which alienate the majority of people in the public. And so then we're left with 2 major parties who we know aren't going to do enough for the environment.
The Greens were also saying that they support dental and mental health being more funded by Medicare, and the vast majority of people support that. But that's not out of the 3 things that they're promoting to be funded by Medicare. They're running with the trans stuff, and the other 2 seem to be pushed aside. But they're going to get more support for dental if they ran on that. Yeah, everyone in this country thinks dental care should be on the PBS.
Yeah. I mean, they are talking about that as well. But in terms of as well what gets media coverage, it's very much the trans stuff. That's what Adam keeps getting asked about. And Adam has said trans rights are non-negotiable. So Adam's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, and I've worked in human rights law. And there's actually, there's only one tiny, tiny field of human rights law which is non-negotiable. There's 8 kind of prohibitions on things like slavery, apartheid, maritime piracy, which are considered like such clear norms of international law that they're non-negotiable. They apply to all states, whether or not you signed up to a treaty. Everything else, literally everything else, is up for debate. The right to life, that's not sacrosanct. America kills people, state sanctioned, Even like the right to be free from violence is also not non-negotiable, because there will be some situations in which violence is okay as a form of self-defense, to hear this platitude, which means nothing and is legally wrong, come from the mouth of a lawyer and a man who I have campaigned for 10 years and who I've respected, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart to see the Greens like this.
So I imagine you're feeling somewhat politically homeless at the moment, like many of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you going to do? I mean, am I allowed to ask, who are you going to vote for?
So I live, Adam is my local member. And I would have considered voting for Adam. but I'm not going to now because I think that's too dangerous. So I will not be voting for anyone.
Yeah. For women out there watching, and I'd like to see everyone just draw a big female symbol on the ballot paper and just throw it in like that. I think that would send a message. I don't know if it would get reported in the media, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Australian Electoral Commission, they do pay attention to how people do informal votes and the kind of graffiti that is scrawled on ballot papers. So absolutely, like I'll be writing something like I stand for women's sex-based rights, and none of the parties do. Yeah, like I'll be putting some sort of message on my ballot paper.
Yeah. Who do you think will win ultimately, Liberal or Labor?
I'm really bad at predicting who will win. So pretty much every time, whoever I predict, unless it's like a few days out, it's the other person who'll win. You know, I don't know that there's that much difference between the two major parties.
True. I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Like Shorten was a shoe-in last election. They said, oh, this is, Shorten is an absolute shoe-in. Everyone was expecting Labor to storm to victory, and they didn't. So who knows what's going to happen? A lot of there's a lot of momentum against Scott Morrison personally, but I think the balance is that there's a lot of momentum in the fear of what Labor will do if they get in, because Dan Andrews has a lot of haters, and there's a real fear in the community of the same laws that Andrews has introduced in Victoria occurring on a federal level. And there's genuine fear, including the militarisation of the police force and other things that traditional leftists should normally be screaming about, but they're just like, oh no, it's all good.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing seeing like army tanks down St Kilda Boulevard heading towards the Shrine. I mean, obviously,
nice black,
didn't
shiny
support the protesters, but yeah, I mean, the left just seems to have become ideologically intolerant and fascistic.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Did you see Kath Deves has been hauled across the hot coals for sort of comparing gender critical views to Nazi resistance? Did you see that?
I did see the headlines. I mean, she's really just getting slammed, isn't she? It's horrible to see the way the media is treating her. But she's also getting a lot of community support. A lot of people who do just say, we agree with you. Yeah. Go for it, Kat. We don't want men playing women's sports.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. I think the abuse has peaked. I think that's been like a week straight of them just saying all sorts of outrageous things about Kath. Now, we saw with Rohan, still can't get used to saying Rohan, sorry, Rohan, if you're watching. We saw with Rohan that as soon as Kath came along, he was dumped. They don't care about him anymore. So it's pretty soon. I mean, it's obviously gone longer for Kath, one, because she's female and she's been targeted mostly on Twitter by males with blue ticks. But, it's gone on longer for Kath. But, in the next couple of days, some other person they can demonise is going to come along, and then Kath can get on with running her campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. We do need a movement here in Australia like they have in the UK to really promote women's rights.
We need someone uncancelable like J.K. Rowling who can give us a platform, and we don't quite have that. You and Holly and a few of the other women and Kath are probably like our famous TERFs, but you're not like a billionaire like JK.
No.
There's got to be someone out there, someone in the media, like someone from the ABC. I know there's ABC journalists that I can almost guarantee that they would agree with us but are too scared to speak out. Someone with respect from other journalists or someone like that. Anyway, I'm surprised people like Lisa Wilkinson, who is an intelligent critical thinker, married to a buffoon, but why she hasn't come out and said, okay, these women deserve to be heard too. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Maybe sales. Now she's resigning. Maybe. We'll see. Well, look, the other thing is the UK Greens, they have specific sections set up for women. Is there anything like that here in Australia, or can it be created? What do you think?
So there is a Victorian Greens Women's Network. I believe that, look, I assume that every state party of the Greens has got an equivalent. I can't remember the wording for membership of the Greens Women's Network. It was really weird. And I remember sitting at a meeting once and we're like, why does it say it like this? It's, you know, like says something about women and female identifying people and then something else. And Bianca Haven, a notorious TRA in the Greens, was like, oh, I think it's to cover trans men. And everyone just kind of shifted uncomfortably.
Oh.
And we're like, oh, we don't know what to do with this. I was just like, well, but of course trans men would be allowed into the Women's Network. They're women. So there's still some hangovers in the Greens from back in the day when we did believe that sex was real. You know, that was the party position. But no, otherwise that's been, you know, really quite captured, and it's a pretty nasty little, no, I won't say that. It's a bit of a fiefdom. And a hotbed of trans activism.
Yeah, I was approached by some members of the Animal Justice Party, and they think that their campaign has been ruined by their leaders, rampant promotion of trans activism because both of his children have transitioned. And they were said that, you know, we're deeply concerned. We're devastated that he announced his promotion of trans stuff, you know, 2 weeks after the election deliberately. And so, yeah, they're having the same problem, you know, and that's another party that I considered voting for, Animal Justice, and I can't vote for them either because they're fully captured by trans activism.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, they're terrible, aren't they?
Look, there's got to be, if in the general public, the ratio is about 80% of the general public are against men in women's sport and can actually say that women are adult human females, not gender identities. That's the consensus in the general public. So you've got to imagine that within the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, that ratio must be pretty much the same as the general public. Greens, maybe it's a bit different. And I mean, that was reflected in the poll that Binary did on men in women's sport, where the Greens voters were 55% in favour of protecting women's sport. So that's my theory.
So, I mean, I think that within the Greens, people are really scared to speak out. So as a Green member who is questioning on this issue, it's easier to just not really think about it, right? Because the loudest voices are these horrible voices, like this Haven guy that I mentioned. The tweets that he's made about me, you know, talking about hating me, saying that I'll kneecap people if they don't agree with me, you know, and like they're his public tweets, right? In meetings, also with the Greens meetings now being online, and then there's this furious activity in chat rooms, which can be very disparaging. It's one of the real disadvantages of having meetings online rather than in person. But no, I think that a lot of people in the Greens don't support the extremity of the Greens' position, but are very scared about speaking out. And so, yeah, one of the great things to see with Rohan was the kind of the pushing of the boundaries of what it's okay to say within the party and forcing other party members to support him, right? Because Rohan is a person who's been a member of the party for, I think, almost 20 years. He's been a Greens councillor for 10 years, which is a totally thankless job. You know, he's been an acting state director. Like when we were between state directors, Rohan was the person the party turned to say, can you fill in this position for a few months, right? Like he's given so much to the party. to have someone like him after you've had someone like me who's, you know, nowhere near his profile, but also like I was a very serious volunteer within the party. I think it makes people start to see that we're just going to keep stagnating if people don't start speaking out on this issue. Having said that, I wouldn't really want to go back into the party and be one of the people there trying to fight for a radical feminist or gender critical voice to be heard, because it would be like banging my head against a brick wall. I've done it. I've tried it. It destroyed, you know, I don't know, destroyed my commitment to the movement.
Yeah, I can imagine. A personal question, did it take a toll on you personally going through all that?
I mean, look, I'm pretty resilient and I have the strength of my convictions, you know, like there's nothing that'll get you through something quite as much as just knowing that you're right, yeah? And I've been a radical feminist for a long time. I used to work with women in the sex industry from a radical feminist position. So, you know, I've got experience to draw on in terms of holding unpopular positions. But it's had an impact on my ability to work and to volunteer. So I was on the board of the Flemington Kensington Community Legal Centre, and the staff there just issued like this terrible threat to the chair of the board. They said that if the board didn't get rid of me, then at the upcoming AGM where the board would be re-elected, they were just going to stack the board. They were, you know, like I had to go. They said that I had a conflict of interest. So this was a letter written by lawyers who should know what a conflict of interest is. There was no, like I did not have a conflict of interest. It was just a very stupid thing of them to say. And they said that I caused harm to staff, their partners and clients of the service by my membership of the board. So then when I met with the CEO and the chair and asked for like how I caused harm, the CEO said he couldn't ask staff to elaborate on that because that would cause them harm.
That's so dumb.
That would trigger them, right? That would be unsafe for them to do that. So I never got to find out how me being on the board and being the person who always put her hand up to take minutes and to write a fundraising strategy and give up her Fridays to come and volunteer for the organisation, I never found out how that actually caused harm. But I was just like, I've lost respect for the CEO and for the principal solicitor. So that was that. And I know that now I couldn't ever work in the community legal centre. Like I just wouldn't get a job there. That's hard. Like it's hard knowing that my employment prospects are limited because of my very reasonable public positions, even though I'm a really good lawyer, you know, and yeah, I love my current job, luckily, and I have a wonderful boss. So that's great. I'm lucky in that way. But if I ever wanted to leave, it'd be hard for me.
That's outrageous, but you know what? You'll be vindicated in time. We all will. Everyone will be saying the TERFs were right all along.
Yeah. Well, they'll probably say that some man was right all along, but we'll know that we actually led the way.
As long as it's not Mark Latham or someone like that. Oh no.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Nina. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right, you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too.
We will. Thank you. You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh, that was good.
Wow, what a story. Everyone's got such interesting stories. But what a loss to vulnerable people that someone like Nina isn't able to represent them in a capacity as a not-for-profit, a free lawyer. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely disgusting. I was watching something the other day where they were talking about women tend to go for reputational damage against their enemies. whereas men will just have a punch on in the car park.
Well, I must be a man then, because I'll take it to someone and go, right, let's have it out. But, you know, that men seem to like to attack my reputation and my integrity and dismiss me on the grounds of a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I don't see a lot of that from women. I don't see women, I see them attacking a person's belief, but I don't really see the people attacking reputation as much as I do from men.
Oh, look, just what Nina was talking about, what happened with that community.
That's awful.
Legal centre, like, you know, that's reputational damage, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm out in the outer suburbs, and I used to be a member of the Labor Party, but I tore that up over this issue. And the problem we have out here is that it's not an issue, like, because you turn up to a meeting and it's usually in someone's house and there'll be 20 people there. 5 of them will be women. One will be making the tea.
Yeah.
One will be greeting them at the door. So there's only 3 women in the executive talking.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come up. This whole issue of trans stuff and the attack on women's sex-based rights and trans women in sport and any of these, and, you know, the fact the gender clinic is affirmation only, none of this stuff ever comes up. And I know if I was to walk in and bring it up, which I've done, I approach all the local political candidates, regardless of who they represent. Their whole thing is, I didn't understand. I didn't know anything about this. I'll get back to you. And then they don't, no comment, you know, they never get back. I have the local Liberal member here, and I'm not a Liberal voter. The local Liberal member here did support me when the conversion therapy bill was being promoted. And she said, look, I 100% agree with you, and I will speak in Parliament, you know, to represent our voice. And she did. So, but yeah, the Labor Party is just completely oblivious to everything that's going on. But I think that they're now willfully ignorant. I think people know that this is in the background. They're just hoping it's not going to come closer and attack them. Well, they better, because if anyone who has any political awareness will be watching what is happening in the UK and packing themselves.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. You know, I think it's only going to get better for gender critical people in Australia. It's in the spotlight. The Age, in one of their articles this week, even said that it's an election issue. They said it.
I wish one of them would do a bio on all the TERFs and interview people, you know, like Nina and Holly and you know, and some grassroots TERFs like yourself, and, you know, and I wish they would just say, to humanize us, because we're this abstract concept, or we're seen as right-wingers or conservatives. And I know Kath Deves, she's not a ultra conservative, she's quite a moderate, but she's been painted as a right-wing conservative. But we need, you know, to show them that we are women from all sorts of diverse backgrounds, not just the white feminists, that we are from all sorts of financial demographics, from different you know, political affiliations, disabled, not disabled. You know, we're a ragtag bunch of women who all come together and agree on this one issue, but we're being completely misrepresented or not platformed at all. It's not fair.
Oh God, look, the other thing with Kath, I've been thinking, she's done really well on Sky News because they're friendly to us, but
friendly to me.
But true. But, you know, then I imagine, like, if they got her on the 7:30 report, it would just be nasty, vicious. And, you know, there's not a lot of women that are ready to go through that, or that have the debating skills to go through that, because it would just be vicious. You'd be attacked. It'd be awful.
I'd do it.
Yeah, you would.
If an ABC journalist tried to, you know, they'd have to edit it, because I would just talk back.
Yeah,
they would just have to heavily edit it, so they completely, and I didn't get a word in, because everything they threw at me, I'd just deflect back at them. They wouldn't get a word, and that's why people like me aren't asked. That's why some of the women in the UK who are now getting a platform, like Helen Joyce and people like that, who can articulate themselves and can argue really well. That's why they didn't have a voice for so many years.
I was giggling in the middle of that, because I was like, if you're in the middle of a interview on the 7:30 report, just constantly bring it back to autogynephilia.
That's it. That's a peak trans moment. And this is what I'm telling people, you know, how do I know more about this and how do I learn more about what's actually going on? And the first thing I say is know the difference between a transsexual and an autogynephile.
Yeah.
And the second thing I say is understand how our media and our government organisations have been captured by ACON, and I refer them to Kit Kowalski.
Yep.
Then understand rapid onset gender dysphoria.
Yep.
And then go and look at Jennifer Bilek for the background of the trans industrial complex. And that's basically my 4-step peak someone. And they're all coming back to me going, whoa. And, you know, and I remember when I first started looking into some of the background of this, you know, because I sussed that the trans thing was a bit off, because men in women's spaces is a bit off. Kids getting chopped up is a bit off. Kids getting mutilated is a bit off. But when I looked into how all this has come about, I was there like going, have I got a tin foil hat on? Because it just seems so unbelievable, but it's actually happening and it's so easy to prove.
Yeah. It's like mind parasites. Mind parasites have taken it. I'm just looking through my notes. Pauline Hanson did a press release this week about Scott Morrison not supporting Kath on the women's sports thing. Pauline Hanson was spot on. Everything she said.
I hate that. I just got slammed during the week. Someone sent me some screenshots of some idiot from Antifa slagging me off for being a horrible TERF, and they were saying that I was friends with, you know, Sky News and Pauline Hanson and Mark Latham and all this stuff. They're really clutching at straws to make me look like a bad person. But no, I don't, you know, I'm not. The only thing I agree with Pauline and Mark Latham on is this issue. Yeah. And we're coming at it from completely different perspectives too.
In other news, the NETU, the National Tertiary Education Union, they are in negotiations over Melbourne University contracts, and they're pushing for 30 days paid gender transition leave.
Oh yeah.
Outrageous.
Oh yes. Bronwyn Winter resigned her membership of that union, even though she was one of the founders, over this issue because it's so freaking ridiculous. And she sent them a beautiful serve that you have to read.
Yeah, I saw that, but I haven't read it yet. I'll get onto it. And then the other thing that happened, poor Holly Lawford-Smith, there's been a bit of fallout over that screenshot that got leaked. That
was so funny. Yeah.
Like the university instructed her to remove the vomit emojis.
She put a vomit emoji on a picture of the trans flag. Like, as most of us know, the origin of the trans flag is actually a pedophile, and actually convicted pedophile invented the trans flag. And that's why it's pale blue and baby pink, right?
I don't think he's a convicted pedophile.
Wasn't he?
No.
Or was it someone linked to a pedophile?
No, he's just an autogynephile. Like he said, he gets sexually excited wearing women's clothing. But
is that all?
But he used the pink and blue colours, and those colours are like those baby pink, baby blue are used by pedophile organisations. So that's like sort of this tenuous link there. Like, surely he knew that these other pedophile groups were using those colours. Why did he choose?
Well, adult babies flag them. Adult babies use the trans flag as well. And we all know that there's a lot of happening there. But I must have read somewhere, because I don't like to misquote because I'm so paranoid about getting defamation suits thrown at me. So I'll have to have a dig through my files. Yeah. But anyway, a lot of people find the flag a bit, a bit gross, and also the way that it's used instead of the traditional rainbow flag. So they put Holly put a puke emoji next to the flag. And I didn't Rohan like it or something like that, it said, or, and that's what the media's run with, that they were doing pukies at the trans flag. Now, that's really funny. So
And Holly's been counselled by Melbourne University. Poor Holly. But some idiot on Twitter, she was saying she was outraged that Oxford University Press are releasing Holly's book, publishing Holly's upcoming book, which is called Gender Critical Feminism. She was so outraged, she was shaking. And then the next day, she's done this like open letter and is trying to get signatures. And she's just gone on this huge rant about you're erasing trans people's existence. And then at the end, here's the demand. This is what this woman's demanding: a clear and detailed account of what measures have been taken to ensure the scholarly quality of this forthcoming publication, and what further steps the Oxford University Press is taking to make itself accountable for the consequences of its publication should the book go forward to print. Like, they are the most piss weak demands I have ever seen in an open letter. Like, it's just waffle, just total waffle.
They're all a pack of book burners. They haven't even read the book, and yet they're already counting, like, trying to get it burnt. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. I'm quite heartened, though. I mean, because all this publicity, everyone wants to read a banned book. Yeah. So all this publicity has actually got all these, gender critical feminists going, "Oh, I'm going to pre-order a copy." And it's not a cheap book, but I've pre-ordered a copy. Nearly everyone I know has pre-ordered a copy. So all this campaign is actually pushing the sales of this book, and Oxford's going to go, fantastic, our sales will be right up because this is a banned book. Fabulous. I was really surprised. My local library carries a lot of TERFy books, like it carries Irreversible Damage, and it carries Helen Joyce's book, Kathleen Stock's book. And I was really shocked because I went around to all the local libraries to see if they did stock them, and they do, and they're out weeks and weeks in advance. They have to reserve them. And I was very surprised because my council is very captured, and we've tried to engage in services with them, and one of the disclaimers was that we had to tick a box that said that we had to be inclusive of trans and non-binary identities on every single level of our interaction with them. So if we were to be a women's only service, which is what we were proposing, that we would still have to admit trans people. And so I didn't tick the box, therefore we couldn't go any further negotiating with council. So they're that captured. And yet their council libraries have all allowed these books because someone at the library said, well, in the interest of free speech, we better have these books.
Well, there's some educated radfems working at the library there.
I would hope so, but there's also drag queen story hour.
So
same library. And even we were up in Brisbane in March, and we went to the International Women's Day event. And I know that the bookshops and public libraries there in Brisbane were all promoting Jane Caro's book as representative of for International Women's Day, as representative of a feminist. And that was quite jarring, with all the radfems heading off to International Women's Day to walk past and see all these, here are all Jane Caro's wonderful books when she's a trans activist. Yeah. It's like, oh my God. All right. So, but the job of libraries is to reflect all views. A job of a functioning society is to reflect most views in the public, unless they're like horrendous views. Now, you would think that in our society, that people who are trying to safeguard and protect children would have a voice rather than the people that are trying to take away those safeguards. So our society is very sick.
All right. I agree completely. We're going to have to wrap things up, but I have one last thing that I think we should discuss. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people, gender critical people, saying that Kath Deves shouldn't have apologised for anything that she said. What do you think?
She apologised for the language that she used because it caused offence, but she didn't backtrack at all. She didn't backtrack. She said, you know, I continue to, I hold my position and I continue to advocate for women and girls. She backtracked on the dramatic language. And I think that was probably a requirement from her party, that she had to make some comment. I think she was very brave to double down on her beliefs. Now, I come on here and I say a whole bunch of stuff and I offend people, but, you know, I'm not running for office. So I usually get an opportunity to defend myself in the comments. So if I say something dumb and offend someone, I'm going to say, look, I'm really sorry. What I meant was blah, blah, blah. I didn't mean to offend you, because I never intentionally go out to offend.
That's what I wish Kath had done, was said, yes, I said these things, and here's why I said them. I said them because this is happening to kids, this. But yeah, that's just
the party line.
That's my personal take. She probably has been pressured or advised behind the scenes to issue those 2 apologies, but yeah.
Now we have to put pressure on Zali Steggall to come out and say whether she approves of trans women in women's sport. Like, we really have to put the pressure on her, because she's using the momentum against Kath to her own advantage. Now, how's the electorate going to go if they have two potential candidates who oppose men in women's sport? Like, you know, so we really have to push her on this issue, because I don't think it's fair to Kath that nobody is asking the other candidate the same questions.
Yep. All right, let's do it. Twitter mob style. Everyone get on there. All right.
I'm really scared I'm going to lose my Twitter, and this, you know, all these. I really have this feeling like that I'm watching my back. It's really unsettling, and I'm nobody, but I have this feeling that I have to watch my back because they're coming for me. Like, and I'm going to either lose my Twitter. I've already lost my Facebook temporarily. I'll get that back. You know, this platform, like something. I just have this feeling. And maybe that's a good thing, because maybe it means that our voices are getting heard. Yeah. So touch wood. We'll still be here next week.
Stay safe. All right. Well, thank you to all our subscribers. Please like.
Thank you.
And we'll see you. And a happy Good Friday. Happy Easter to everyone celebrating that. Enjoy the time off. We'll see you next Friday.
See you, everyone. Thank you.